What if I told you that some things in your life must remain hidden, no matter who asks? As one of God's chosen, you carry a divine calling. But not everyone around you is for you. Some will doubt you, some will betray you, and some will try to stop what God is doing in your life. Even Jesus kept certain things hidden, only revealing them at the right time. So why are you exposing everything? There are 5 powerful things you must never reveal to anyone. Knowing this could protect your destiny and keep you from walking straight into the enemy's trap. In today's modern world, where sharing and transparency seem almost second nature, keeping silent and guarding what's sacred might feel countercultural. Yet, for those chosen by God, discretion isn't just a virtue, it's a strategy to protect your destiny and the blessings God has entrusted to you. Silence holds the power to shield, preserve, and advance God's promises in your life. 1. Your personal struggles and weaknesses. Not everyone needs to know every detail of your journey. God created each of us with a unique purpose. But that doesn't mean everyone needs to know the intricate details of your life. Oversharing has become common, but transparency isn't always the same as wisdom. Your struggles aren't for public consumption. The Apostle Paul wrote in the book of 2 Corinthians, chapter 12 verse 9, that God said to him, "My grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness." Paul acknowledged his weaknesses to highlight God's grace, not to invite criticism or exploitation. There's a difference between confessing to a trusted confidant and exposing yourself to those lacking discernment. Consider the story of Samson in the book of Judges. Chapter 16 verse 17. He revealed the secret of his strength to Delilah, thinking she cared for him. Instead, she used that knowledge to destroy him. Samson's downfall wasn't just about trusting Delilah. It was about disclosing what should have stayed hidden. Don't hand the keys to your destiny to those who don't have your spiritual well-being at heart. Why does this matter? Because you're called to live strategically, not recklessly. When you share your struggles or weaknesses without discernment, you open yourself to unnecessary battles. The enemy doesn't need to craft new weapons when you give him the ammunition. Wisdom and caution are key. Even Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray. As we read in the book of Luke, chapter 5 verse 16, he shared his deepest truths with a select few disciples, not the crowds. Caution isn't secrecy, it's stewardship. Your life is a precious tapestry being woven by God, and not every thread needs to be exposed before it's complete. Be selective about who gets to see the unfinished work of grace in your life. 2. God's plans before they come to pass. God's timing is perfect, but it often requires patience. Sharing plans too soon can invite opposition, confusion, or even derailment. The prophet Habakkuk declared in the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 verse 3, "For the vision awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Though it linger, wait for it, it will certainly come and will not delay." Take the story of Joseph in the book of Genesis, chapter 37. God gave Joseph a vision of greatness, a dream where his family would bow to him. In his zeal, Joseph shared this dream with his brothers. Instead of rejoicing with him, they grew jealous and plotted to kill him. Though God ultimately fulfilled his promise, Joseph's journey to his destiny was filled with betrayal, slavery, and imprisonment. The lesson here isn't to dismiss the vision but to discern the timing and audience for sharing it. Why does this matter? Because divine plans are fragile in their infancy. When God plants a vision in your heart, it's like a seed. A seed doesn't sprout overnight. It needs time to take root, grow, and bear fruit. Exposing a seed to harsh elements before it's ready can stunt its growth or kill it entirely. Jesus himself set the example. In the book of John, chapter 7 verse 6, Jesus told his disciples, "My time has not yet come." Even the Savior, with all power and authority, understood the importance of timing. He didn't rush into his ministry or reveal the fullness of his purpose too soon. He moved in sync with God's appointed time, knowing his steps were ordained. The enemy is watching and waiting too. He can't destroy God's plan, but he can create distractions, stir opposition, or sow seeds of doubt. When you reveal a vision prematurely, think of Nehemiah, who received a burden from God to rebuild Jerusalem's walls. He didn't immediately announce his plan. Instead, as recorded in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 2 verse 12, he arose at night and quietly inspected the walls without telling anyone what God had put in his heart. He understood the value of strategy and caution. Trust God's timing. Understand that delays aren't denials. When the vision tarries, it's because God is aligning circumstances, preparing you, and strengthening your faith. Habakkuk reminds us to wait for the appointed time, trusting that what God promised, He will fulfill. Practice discernment in sharing. Ask yourself, is this the right time? Remember Joseph's brothers, they weren't ready to celebrate his dream. Recognize that not everyone can steward the vision God has given you. Guard the vision through prayer. When God reveals His plan, your first response shouldn't be to speak but to pray. Offer the vision back to Him, seeking wisdom, guidance, and protection. In the book of Proverbs, chapter 3 verses 5 and 6, we're instructed, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." 3. Your private conversations with God. Intimacy with God is sacred. Jesus gave us profound guidance in the book of Matthew, chapter 6 verse 6, "But when you pray, go into your room, close the door and pray to your Father, who is unseen. Then your Father, who sees what is done in secret, will reward you." This verse isn't just about the act of prayer, it's a revelation about intimacy with God. There are moments when God speaks to you in a secret place, unveiling spiritual strategies, personal instructions, or deep revelations. These conversations aren't for the public, they're treasures meant to shape your destiny. Consider Moses at the burning bush in the book of Exodus, chapter 3. God didn't reveal His plan to deliver the Israelites in a public square. Instead, He met Moses in the wilderness, alone, and spoke through a burning bush. Why? Because the calling and instructions God gave Moses weren't for everyone's ears. They were sacred, reserved for the one chosen to fulfill the mission. Moses' obedience to this private encounter set the stage for the exodus of the Israelites from Egypt. God's call often begins in private. The secret place is where identity, purpose, and strategy are forged. Some revelations are too fragile to withstand others' scrutiny. Not everyone is ready to understand or support what God is doing in your life. God's plans can defy human logic. In the book of Isaiah, chapter 55 verses 8 and 9, God declares, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways and my thoughts than your thoughts." God's plans for your life may defy human reasoning and invite criticism or doubt if shared too soon. Protect what God entrusts to you by keeping it between you and Him until the appointed time. Recall the story of Jesus and the Transfiguration in the book of Matthew, chapter 17 verses 1 through 9. Jesus took Peter, James, and John up a high mountain and was transfigured before them. They saw His glory and heard God's voice say, "This is my Son, whom I love. With Him I am well pleased." Listen to him. Yet Jesus commanded them, "Don't tell anyone what you have seen until the Son of Man has been raised from the dead." Why did Jesus insist on secrecy? Because timing was critical. Revealing it prematurely could have disrupted God's redemptive plan. Think of Mary, Jesus' mother, when the angel Gabriel announced she'd conceive and bear the Son of God. As recorded in the book of Luke, chapter 1 verses 26 through 38. Mary didn't rush out to proclaim this divine revelation. Instead, she pondered these things in her heart. As noted in Luke chapter 2 verse 19. Some revelations require incubation in a heart of faith before they're released to the world. Nehemiah rebuilt the wall. When Nehemiah arrived in Jerusalem to rebuild the wall, he didn't immediately disclose his plan to the officials or the people. He inspected the walls at night and kept his purpose hidden until the right moment. As we read in the book of Nehemiah, chapter 2 verses 11 through 16. This strategic silence allowed him to avoid opposition and prepare effectively. 4. The depth of your spiritual strength or weakness. Not for public display. As God's chosen, the depth of your spiritual strength or weakness isn't meant for public show. Revealing too much can make you vulnerable to spiritual attack. The Apostle Paul, under divine inspiration, urges this in the book of Ephesians. Chapter 6 verses 10 through 18. Be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power by putting on the full armor of God. Each piece of the armor, the belt of truth, breastplate of righteousness, shield of faith, helmet of salvation, sword of the Spirit, and prayer, is designed not only to protect you but to conceal and safeguard the treasures of your faith. David's story is a powerful example. In the book of 1 Samuel, chapter 17, David, a young shepherd, didn't boast about his spiritual strength when facing Goliath. He didn't proclaim to Saul or the Israelites how strong his faith was or how many victories he'd won against lions and bears in secret. Instead, he acted in obedience, relying on God's power to deliver him. Strength comes from your relationship with God. David understood his strength didn't come from human affirmation but from his relationship with God. Likewise, you must guard the intimate details of your spiritual journey, only revealing them when God directs you to do so. The risk of exposure is real. When you reveal the depth of your spiritual strength or weakness too soon, you risk exposing yourself to the enemy's schemes. Peter warns us in the book of 1 Peter. Chapter 5 verse 8, your enemy the devil prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour. He listens when we speak, watches our actions, and exploits any weaknesses we publicly reveal. That's why Jesus often withdrew to solitary places to pray. As noted in Luke chapter 5 verse 16, he knew the value of secrecy in spiritual matters, guarding his connection with the Father even as he ministered publicly. 5. Your future plans and vision. The sacredness of plans. There's a sacredness to the plans God has entrusted to you, a reverence for the visions he's whispered deep into your soul. In the book of Habakkuk, chapter 2 verses 2 and 3, the prophet was instructed, write down the vision and make it plain on tablets so that a herald may run with it. For the vision awaits an appointed time. It speaks of the end and will not prove false. Clarity and timing. This duality teaches us a profound truth. While clarity is essential for fulfillment, timing is equally critical for protection. A God-given vision isn't a public announcement. It's a covenant between you and the Almighty, requiring discernment and wisdom to nurture it until its full time. Strategic silence. Sometimes, the deepest acts of faith aren't in what you proclaim but in what you withhold. Guarding your vision is an act of spiritual stewardship. Too often, dreams miscarry, not because they lack divine origin, but because they're exposed too soon. Not everyone can celebrate what God is doing in your life, and some may actively work to undermine it. Wise counsel. So wisdom calls for strategic silence. The book of Proverbs, chapter 15 verse 22 reminds us, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisers they succeed. Yet this counsel must be selective. Seek spiritually mature advisors who honor God's voice over their own and have the discernment to align with His will for your life. The difference between sharing and praying. There's a difference between sharing your vision with those who'll pray for its success and those who'll prey on its potential. Like Nehemiah rebuilding Jerusalem's wall, sometimes you must work in silence with a sword in one hand and a tool in the other, guarding the vision as you build. As recorded in Nehemiah chapter 4 verse 17. Silence is strength. The lesson is clear. Not everything is meant to be spoken. Silence isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Silence gives your vision the incubation it needs to grow strong roots. Silence allows God to fortify you against the storms of doubt and opposition that will surely come. Partnership with God. Silence is your partnership with God in protecting what He's planted in you. Your vision is sacred, and your stewardship of it is a test of your trust in Him. Will you hold fast to what He's shown you even when others demand an explanation? Will you treasure it in your heart like Mary did, trusting that God Himself will bring it forth? Fulfillment doesn't depend on how many know. Your vision's fulfillment doesn't hinge on how many people know it. It hinges on your faithfulness to the one who gave it. Let this be a reminder to walk in reverence, speak with discernment, and act with wisdom. In its fullness of time, God will bring your vision to light. And when He does, it'll be undeniable, unstoppable, and a testament to His glory. Until then, guard your divine entrustment as if it's the most precious treasure you possess. For if you're God's chosen, not everyone is chosen to understand the weight of your calling. Protect it, nurture it, and let God reveal it in His perfect time. Reflect on the burden of being chosen by God. It's not a burden, it's an honor, but it's also a responsibility requiring wisdom, humility, and deep reliance on the Holy Spirit.